Hello, welcome once again to my kitchen here at Trails Inn 62. Alright, before I go on here, I just want to say something. I've been negligent in this, I guess, and I apologize. I just want to thank all of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel and let you know how much I really do appreciate it. I don't talk about that, and I don't ask people to do it because, frankly, I do this because I enjoy doing it. I enjoy processing and canning and dehydrating and all the stuff that I do. So, but I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for subscribing to my channel, and I hope you enjoy this and the future videos that I do. If I can help you in any way in your canning process, don't hesitate to ask. Now let's move on. A little bit of canning today, and I'm going to be canning meatloaf. So I'm going to mix this up, and I'm going to show you what I do. Recipes vary on meatloaf, but this is the recipe that I use, or I'm going to use. I've never done this before, so it's the first time for all of us. Alright, going to be canning some meatloaf, and basically what I'm going to be doing is making the meatloaf into meatloaf patties. And if I measured it right and figured right, it should be about 3 meatloaf patties to a pint. And I will use wide mouth pints because it's easier getting them in and out. Otherwise, your patties will have to be as small as a regular mouth opening. So we're going to be putting in wide mouth pints, and we're going to be making meatloaf patties. All right. First of all, I've got my onions chopped up, my peppers chopped up, and I got all my ingredients out here except the hamburger. I'll get it out in just a minute. But we start out by mixing in a big mixing bowl. I'm going to have 2 eggs. Now, I know the powers that be tell you not to can eggs, and I'm going to be putting some oatmeal in there also, and they also say don't be canning oatmeal. But it's going to be such a small quantity put in there, and it's mixed in with everything else, that it won't be a problem. There won't be no dense mass of the oatmeal, so because it's going to be mixed in with the meat. It's kind of a binding agent, kind of helps hold things together. And they're just 2 eggs, going to be divided up among all these patties, and it's going to be pre-cooked or par-cooked quite well. So before we put it in there. So that's going to help out with the canning process too. So there shouldn't be any problem with it, but as always in things like this, because the powers that be say don't, you have to do what you're comfortable with. I'm comfortable doing this. If you're not comfortable putting in a couple of eggs and some oatmeal in these and doing it, then don't do it. You have to be your own quality control, and it's your family that you have to be concerned about. Me, I'm not worried about this. I have no problem with this. I wouldn't have a problem feeding this to my granddaughters or anything. So here we go. Meatloaf. Alright, the first thing I've done is I've cracked 2 eggs and put in there, and I'm going to kind of break these up, kind of stir them up a little bit so it'll mix up better with everything, because everything's going to be mixed up anyway. Now this is going to make, I'm going to use 4 pounds of hamburger to make this, and should make, if my calculations are right, should make about 8 pints. Alright, so it's going to be 4 pounds of hamburger, make about 8 pints. So the first thing I do is I put in 2 eggs, put them in my bowl. Then I'm going to add some garlic powder. 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. 1, 2. Then I'm going to put in 2½ teaspoons of salt. Now you don't have to use canning salt for this because this isn't going in the liquid. This is going into the ingredients. So I'm going to use regular salt, 2½ teaspoons. Now following the salt, it says the recipe calls for black pepper, ½ teaspoon of black pepper, but I looked and I really don't have any black pepper except what's in my pepper shakers, and so I'm going to use lemon pepper just because I can. So I'm putting in ½ teaspoon of lemon pepper. And then I'm going to put in two tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, or however you say that. This stuff here. Can you read that? I don't know. Worcestershire. 2 tablespoons. And then we lightly whisk this all together. Okay, once you have this lightly whisked together, I had to crunch up my garlic powder there. It's kind of old, so it kind of clumped up a little bit. So let's get this lightly whisked up. And next we add the onions, the bell peppers, and the oatmeal. Now you can also use breadcrumbs for this process. 1 cup of quick oats. 1 cup of chopped onions. And 1/2 cup of chopped bell peppers. These happen to be my dehydrated peppers that I rehydrated. And I'm going to mix all these up, stir them up good. Now once you get all that mixed together, then the next thing is to add the ground beef. And it's going to be raw ground beef that you put in here just like you do for regular meatloaf. And as I said, in this case, I'll be using 4 pounds of ground beef. So I've got my little scale out here, got it zeroed out, and I'll put ground beef in there and get 4 pounds of it. Alright, there's my 4 pounds of ground beef, and this comes from a 10-pound log that I have been thawing in the refrigerator for a couple of days. And now I'm going to add my beef, and I do wear gloves when I handle raw meat like this, just because I feel like it's a better way to go. So I've got my 4 pounds of ground beef. Into my bowl. Now the next step is to work this in with your hands. You got to work all this in. So you need a pretty large bowl to do this in. And you got to work it up and get all that worked into the ground beef so it's all worked together. Now this takes a little bit of time. Alright, once you get that worked up good, then you need to preset your oven to 375 because we're going to bake these in the patties. Now if you have a broiler pan, that works real good because it lets all the stuff drain off of it as we're cooking. I don't have a broiler pan, so what I have is this here. I've got these aluminum things here and foil things, and I put them down in so they drain into a pan. I've got it on this cookie sheet just so I can handle it better. And I'll put my patties in here to cook them. Now to make your patties, I'm using a wide mouth lid. I've got a flat and I've got a ring. I put the flat in the ring like that. Then I'm going to take the hamburger my meatball mix, and I'm going to pack it in there. Don't want to get them too high. If you get them too high, then you won't be able to get the right number of patties in your jar. So they're basically just above the rims, what I'm going to try. And then all you have to do is push it through like that. Peel your flat off. And there you have a patty. Now those will cook up, and they should cook up and fit right in the wide mouth jars. Alright, I'm going to do the rest of these, and we'll be back when I'm done. Alright, one more time, let me show you how I do these, just so you make sure you got it. I take my lid, and I put it in there, and I stuff it in there. You want to make sure you don't get too much in there, and I might have got a little too much in some of these, but I think they'll still fit 3 in a jar. And you pack it in there so it's about even with the top. It can be a little over the top, but not too much. And you peel it off. There's my oven's ready. Now, didn't quite get enough for 8 pints, so I'm not going to quite get 8 pints out of that, and this one here is a little short. I did get 12, 18, 21. And so that'll make 7 pints. So be 7 pints. And maybe if I'd packed some of those a little less, I might have been able to get a little bit more. But that's 7 pints. It'd probably taken at least another half a pound of beef to get, maybe another pound to get all 8 pints. So I scaled this down from what the original recipe that I found said, but that's okay. We'll make what we have, and that'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pints to put in. So I'll probably do 4 pints. I'm going to be using my electric Nesco canner, and so I'll probably do 4 pints in one and 3 in the other. Alright, we're going to stick these in our oven at 375 for 30 minutes. I did put a little wire trivet in the middle there to straighten those up a little bit. As long as my holes are over my pan to catch the liquid, then I just slide that in there, set my timer for 30 minutes, and we're go. Now, while this batch is cooking, I'm going to start getting together my jars. They need to be hot jars because hopefully the meatloaf will be hot. So I'm going to rinse them off in hot water. I don't do a whole lot of heating for them like some people do. I put mine in hot water in the sink. Fill them up with hot water that's hot enough. I'm going to be covering them with tomato juice. And so I'm going to heat up my tomato juice to simmering, not boiling, just heat it up where it's hot. And that's what I'll be using to cover the meatloaf patties in the jars with. So I'm going to get my jars and get my tomato juice on the stove to start heating, and get my jars ready to put in some hot water. I still have another batch to put in, so I'm not going to put them in the hot water yet, but I'm going to get everything ready. And then once this batch is done after 30 minutes, then we'll put in the next batch for 30 minutes, and then we'll be ready to pack them in the jars. And I'll get my canner out. Like I said, I'm using my Nesco. It's a electric canner, and it will do 5 pints at a time. Or 4 quarts, but I'm doing mine in pints, and so I'll be doing 2 batches. The first batch I'm going to do 4 pints, and then the next batch I'll do 3 pints. So we'll get these done, get the other one done. I'm going to get things ready in the meantime. We'll be back. Alright, my first batch is done. While my first batch was cooking, there was enough on there to do 4 pints. So while my second batch is in the oven cooking, I'm going to go ahead and do these 4 pints. I had my tomato juice ready to go, And my lids are ready to go. My jars are in the hot water. My canner has hot water and it's ready to go. So I'm ready to do the first 4 pints while the other 3 pints are cooking in the oven for 30 minutes. So these will go ahead and get started while those are cooking, so we'll move this along. Alright, let's see how we do this. Now what I'm going to do when I put the tomato juice in, rather than put the meatloaf patties in and then put the tomato juice on top of it, in order to keep the air bubbles from being so much, I'm going to start by putting a little tomato juice in the bottom of each one. Now it's been simmered, not boiled, so it's good and hot. My jars are hot. And I'm going to put a little tomato juice in the bottom of each one of these to start out with. Alright, then I'm going to take my patties, put them in. See, that one's a little tight, so I put that down in there. It's got tomato juice already in it, so there's no air bubbles in the bottom of it there. Can you see? There we go. Alright. And I'm going to add a little more tomato juice as I put in the second patty again, so that there's no air trapped in there. I'll put it in sideways, and I think probably these are a little big, probably because it's such it was such good hamburger. It didn't cook up quite as much as what the video I saw on these did. And that's probably because they did say they used a cheaper, leaner, or cheaper hamburger. Not quite as lean. But this was an 81.19. So again, I'm adding my tomato juice so that I won't get any air bubbles trapped in there. And we're going to be leaving 1 inch of head space. So it's a little tight fit using this better ground beef, but that's okay. So as you can see, some of them are a little full. No problem, we just take a spoon. We want it down to 1 inch. Now that's going to be down to this rim right here. Oops, in front of the camera. Down to this rim right here is 1 inch. We want to make sure we leave a good inch. And we'll just dip some of this and with anything that you can, it really doesn't matter how careful you are. Well, it does matter how careful you are, but no matter how careful you are, there's still the possibility that you'll have some siphoning. Okay? So don't worry about a little siphoning. As long as your jars seal, that's the main thing. Okay, that looks pretty good. I've got 1 inch there. Next I'm going to take a towel and some vinegar. Why? Because this is meat. Meat has oils in it and grease in it, and you want to clean that up from the edge. You don't want any of that to be on your edge of your jar so that it will seal. And I kind of like to wipe. I was a little messy there, so I'm going to wipe around the outside too, because I don't want that trapped underneath my rings. It won't hurt anything except to just make it messy. But it's very important that you get these rims wipe down. You don't want anything on there. You don't want tomato juice on there. You don't want any bits of meat on there. You don't want any grease on there. You want them clean. And once I get my rims wiped, I'm going to pour what little vinegar that I have left in my canner, because I have very hard water. Now we're ready for our lids and rings. My lid's been soaking in hot water. I bring it to the boil and shut it off, and then I put my lids on that help soften them up. Especially these. These are an off-brand lid here. I haven't had any real trouble with them. Some people do have trouble with some of these. I bought these on Amazon. They've turned out pretty good. I don't really have any trouble with them. So we just hope for the best. Rings, finger tight. For me, that means I just put the ring on, get it lined up, spin it down till it stops, and then I give a little cinch down with my fingers there. Not too much. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too loose. That's 4 jars, pints in my Nesco canner. And I'll get that going. When that's done, I'll put in the other 3. Okay, we got the first batch done. I've got 4 pints here. They're looking pretty good. They're cooling now on the countertop here. I always put a towel down. I don't place it on the, I have a towel counter, so it's cold. No matter what kind of countertop you have, it can be cold enough to crack your jars coming out of a hot canner. So always make sure you put a towel down. But I've got these out, and they're looking pretty good. I had just a tad bit of siphoning. It looks like there was just a little bit come out. It was just kind of a little dab of greasy stuff on the top of the water in there. It wasn't a lot. Didn't really discolor the water very much, but you could just tell just a little bit had. But that happens. So they look good. We're going to hope they seal. And then I'll always take my pot out. It's an electric canner. I always take it out, dump the water out of it, let the pot cool down the inner pot that I took out, and get it cooled down so that I don't put it back in hot, because then that will affect the temperature when you start heating it back up. It needs to be hot water that you put in it, but it needs to be cool when it starts, because I've tried it before and didn't do that, and the sync didn't go right on, synchronization didn't go right on the timing. But so I've got it started, and I've got my tomato juice heating back up. I got my water heating back up for my lids. I got my jars in hot water, 3 of them. So I'm ready to start on the second batch. And we'll do it the same way we did the first one and run it through the canner. All right, there it is, finished up. 7 pints of meatloaf in a jar. My meal in a jar of meatloaf. There's 3 patties in each one. They all sealed. There was just a tad bit of siphoning. Didn't hardly color the water at all. A little bit of, grease. And I know some of those look like they may have a lot of grease in there, but that's not really a lot. It's just pressed against the side, because on the other side of it's the patty, so it's not that thick. It's just pressed up against the side. So there's less grease than what it actually looks like. But there we are, 3 to a pint, and in the tomato juice. Now some people like to put a glaze on them. Add a little brown sugar to the tomato juice that's in the jar, and heat that up with it, and that'll make a glaze on the top of it. Or you may have your own recipe for a glaze for meatloaf you want to put on top of it. Or like I said, I just put ketchup and then heat it up from there. But since I've got the tomato juice in there, I'll probably just put that on top of it and heat it up in the microwave or in the toaster oven, and have some meatloaf on mashed potatoes and corn on the cob and maybe some green beans. Sounds good. Anyway, and then behind that, you see I've got some others back there. I canned up some more of my stuffed pepper soup. And I did 5 of those this morning. I'm fixing to do another. I'm just kind of on a roll now. I have a bunch of stuff here I've been needing to do for some time, but I haven't quite got to it. And there you have it. Meatloaf in a jar. Single serving meal in a jar. And that'll be good. That's 7 of them there I've got. That's 7 meals for me. And I'm going to be doing some more meals in a jar. And be making some videos on there. So be sure and check it out. I'll be putting some more on. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here that I've had that I need to get canned up. I've just been putting it off. So I'm going to get it done. And we'll let you see what we've got coming. I think the next one I'm going to do is going to be a hamburger and potato soup. Then I'm going to do a chili, and then I'll probably do a beef stew, and maybe do a cabbage and hamburger soup, and maybe even a shepherd's pie. Sloppy joes, some other things like that. So, we'll catch you later. From my house to yours. From my kitchen to your kitchen. God bless.